The great historian of the Renaissance, a guy called Jacob Burckhardt, who wrote a great book called The Renaissance, and he's a very prolific writer, but this is his best known book. He said that art follows culture. And in the Renaissance this was true. He reckoned that it took about 50 years for intellectual ideas to appear in the form of visual ones. Right. Now, in the 20th century, we see the exact opposite. Ideas began to appear in the 1920s in the visual arts, which didn't appear at all until the 1960s in philosophy and in intellectual endeavours. Okay? Postmodernism is one of these. Although it wasn't called postmodernism in the art world, it was still the same notion. Now this artistic version of postmodernism was actually kicked off by a guy called Marcel Duchamp. Duchamp submitted this thing called Fountain, he called it Fountain, and it was just a urinal, a porcelain urinal that you would normally bolt on the wall in a train station or something, and you'd pee into it, and called it art. And what he basically was saying was exactly what the postmodernists are saying. He was saying, this is art because I say it's art. Right? Which is exactly the same as a postmodernist thinker saying, my cock is female because I say it's female. There's no difference. It's a total rejection of reality. The urinal wasn't art. Playing a joke in the first place. He was a very witty man, famous for this. In later life he was very popular with fashionable New York dinner parties because he was a born raconteur. But he was also making an intellectual point about art is whatever I say it is, and he was not the first to do this, but he was perhaps the most complete expression of it. But you must understand that Duchamp was a French intellectual. Now, there is no class of people that French intellectuals hate more than the bourgeoisie. That is, the urban upper middle class educated elite. Right? They absolutely detest them. So they detest themselves, because every single one of these philosophers and artists are from that group. They are themselves bourgeois. They are of the group they hate most. So a great deal of their thinking, at worst, is founded in powerful self-loathing, and at best is, when it is funny, and Derrida could be quite funny by the way, is based in a kind of self-mockery, you know, a kind of, well, you know, I can say that, but hey, I'm bourgeois. and Duchamp was doing that. That was what Duchamp was doing. He was making a joke. He didn't expect, I'm absolutely sure, for legions of humanities types indoctrinated with postmodernist ideas to come along and call it the greatest piece of work the 20th century, or indeed art of all time, had ever produced. I'm entirely sure that when, in the early 1960s, Duchamp was commissioned, wait for it, to produce a series of replicas of his famous fountain, he cackled all the way at the bank. He must have thought that was so funny, that his joke, and it's just a joke, his joke is self-mockery, you know. The whole point of urinal, I'll get a picture and stick it up here if I can figure out how to do that. The whole point of urinal is it's self-mockery. It's saying, yeah, art is anything I say it is, isn't it? But, you know, at the same time, it's not. We all know it's not. We all know what art is, don't we? Don't you know what art is? During the Renaissance, art was really well understood by everybody. There was no real hierarchy. There was patronage, you know. The Dukes of Medici, for example, supported many artists, and a lot of the art that we have from the Renaissance wouldn't be there if it wasn't for them. So, you know, you've got to remember that. Particularly Lorenzo de' Medici. He was a famous patron of the art. One of the greatest of all time patrons of the art. Of visual arts, you know, and also poetry. He just loved it all, you know, and he considered it as being the great crowning glory of Florentine culture, was that the art was so damn good, and Florentine artists were winning commissions all over Italy, and he was going to help pay for that. And all of the people of Florence at the time understood. Artists, when they did win a great commission and they came back to Florence, they'd be lionized. They'd be carried on the shoulders like footballers through the streets. Yeah, go Florence. Ordinary people understood art. They really did. You don't have to be one of the educated elite to understand art. So what the educated elite does is it puts barriers in the way of ordinary people understanding art, and it decries the kind of art that ordinary people do like. So it will start saying that popular art is not really art at all. What's important is the contemporary artist Banksy, for example, really exploited this very much in the 90s and early noughties, and of course it all kind of went pop when we actually realised that he was a bourgeois, middle-class, art-educated individual himself. But there is an underlying truth here, and that is that good art tends to be successful, and bad art tends to not be successful. Okay? Now, I know art critics and art historians absolutely loathe this idea, but the simple fact is that you can use the free market to measure the value of a piece of art. And actually, I would argue that's what you should do. That it's not about what critics think or what patrons think. It's about what people think. And if people say that's shit, then you know something? There's a very good chance it's shit. You have to ask yourself, consider, we live in a world where a pair of glasses can be left near to a wall in a large art gallery and attract a crowd. Now, was it art, or did somebody just leave their glasses? Nobody actually knew. I can't actually remember what the result was. But it would work either way. You have to wonder about a culture which would seriously take a pair of glasses lying on the ground as being a work of art. I mean, you just do have to think about this. Consider it for a minute. Where is the art in that? And remember, I have a master's in this, so I don't bullshit you. What I tell you is, this is the skinny. It needs postmodernism to make this jump, to get to the idea that there is no universal standard for art. Because I would say, take the market. If it sells, it's got to be good. It's basic, isn't it? I mean, okay, so I know that within the commercial marketing of art, then people use techniques that are perhaps skew the market, promotion. Favoured authors and favoured painters, favoured pop stars will get promotion and they'll get more money for that. But to be honest with you, the people who are doing the promoting, they know the market, they understand what's going on. They're not stupid, they're not going to invest money unwisely. They want a return. So they're just very good. They're like, people who do the horses, like punters at the horses. They kind of have a pretty good idea who's going to win. And they're going to put the money on that person. That's really all it is. If you look at somebody like Shakira, for example, so an artist whom I rate highly, by the way, she's bloody good, Yeah, she got promotional money. Yes, she is very, very successful. That doesn't alter the fact that she's damn good. And millions upon millions of people know that she's good and think she's good sufficient that they'll buy her work. Okay? So there is a very strong... Elvis, for example, was great. He was very good. He sold millions. You listen to Elvis' work now and it's still as good as it ever was. The man was a genius. He was brilliant. The fact that he was working in a popular milieu does not debase his work. And the fact is that the free market understood how good he was and rewarded him. So we can use the free market as a baseline to evaluate work, artistic work. So what we're saying is that we can take a popular appreciation of an artist's work and use that as a kind of benchmark that we can say, well, it's got to be good. Look how many people like it. A very good example would be, we've given the Renaissance in the visual arts. In the literary arts, look at Shakespeare. You could make the same case for Burns and many others, but Shakespeare, it was a hugely popular, very wealthy man. in his own lifetime because so many people liked his work. You know, this was not a starving artist. You may find today that Shakespeare, you find it a little difficult because of the language, but at the time it was immensely popular. Shakespeare was hugely popular with ordinary people. His theatre was not full of the high and mighties. They certainly were there, but the pit, if you like, it's usually called the pit, the area on the ground where people would stand and watch, full of ordinary people. People understand what is good. They do it innately. We all have this internal benchmark that we know when something's good. The lie that's always told is, by art educators often, is that people don't know what's good. What they say is, people say they know what they like, but what they mean is they like what they know. To an extent that is true. If you're confronted with something that's completely different from outside your culture, that you haven't really got any information about, then it's quite possible that you'll react towards it. You'll go, I don't really like that. But given familiarity, given an understanding, some familiarity with the subject, you will very quickly be able to work out those things that you think are good and those things that are bad. And that is what we need to get to here. Because, like it or not, postmodernism denies the existence of that.